Hey, this is John at sqesuccess.co.uk. This is just going to be a quick video demonstration of how to most effectively use the flashcard content that we provide as part of our content to help prepare for the SQE 1 and 2 exams. So on the screen is what you will roughly see when you get access to the flashcard content uh, and access it through a computer. There's also a corresponding phone app that I'd recommend you also get because it provides a slightly different learning experience, more like a game. And there's also some additional features on the app, such as bookmarking, that you cannot do on the PC view. With that being said, let's go into this general partnerships deck, which is part of the SQE1 Business Law and Practice uh, subject, um, which is for sale for £25 each, or you can get access to all 16 subjects on the SQE 1 for £250. So let's go into the general partnerships deck and study it and see what the Brainscape platform has to offer in terms of incorporating the SQE Success content and their way of studying and showing you the content at set intervals to ensure that you retain it long term based on your rating of how well you knew the answer. I'd recommend you enable continuous study both on the browser version and on the app, because otherwise you will be limited to 10 card sets, which obviously is fine if you want that. But I find if you want a longer study session, that can be quite frustrating to have kind of a checkpoint score come up every 10 cards to tell you how your progress is going. So I enable continuous study. I found it most effective for being able to study a couple of decks in a row and not be interrupted by the progress uh, page. So this is the first card of 62 in the general partnerships deck, and these decks are based off of the SQE syllabus as provided by the SRA, and using textbooks to extract the legal rules. Think about them like an SQE examiner would, to try and spot the nuance and extract the nuance from the legal rule to see how the various parts of the rule could be used to trip you up on an exam question. So this first card is fairly standard. What are the 3 requirements for a general partnership under the Partnerships Act 1890? The answer is 2 or more persons carrying on a business in common with the intention to make a profit. So on its surface, yeah, it's good to know that, but it is more than it is more applicability. Knowing that rule has more applicability than just being able to provide a sentence answer if someone asks you what's a general partnership. You need to analyze its various components and see how the various aspects of that rule can be used on an SQE question to make you pick the wrong answer if you do not know it well enough. So each of those aspects there, 1, 2, and 3, has a way in which the SQE examiners could try and trick you into picking the wrong answer. 2 or more persons, obviously the facts could include information about how many people are in the partnership. If it's just one, it cannot be a partnership. So you need to know that for that. Persons could be used to trip you up because, as we'll see in future cards, persons includes both individuals and corporates. So you could have a fact pattern that has a partnership on the facts between one individual and one corporation or limited company or limited partnership. And if you only had a superficial knowledge of the rules and you had 2 or more persons in your mind, and the question at the bottom of the fact pattern was, is there a valid general partnership? And one of the answer choices was no, because there is not more than, or there is not 2 or more persons, because you identified on the facts that there was one person and one corporate. You would pick that if you didn't have a more nuanced understanding. So the flashcards are designed to examine the rule and then aspects of the rules that could be used to trip you up. As with carrying on business in common, you would need to know what the definition of business is on the facts to be able to determine on the facts whether or not it is present. And then with the intention to make a profit, they could have a fact pattern that says they didn't intend to make a profit. They were doing it for the love of the activity. Or you could have a trick answer trying to trap you into thinking that there wasn't a partnership because they didn't actually make a profit. So that's how the nuance of these legal rules can be inserted into distracting facts to make you question yourself and pick an incorrect answer choice. So if you had on the facts that these two people genuinely intended to make profit from their idea that they were entering into, that's enough for a partnership, and you would need to know that to be able to rule out an answer choice to the question, is there a valid general partnership? No, because the individuals did not actually make a profit. So as you will see with the coming flashcards, they are drafted in such a way to incorporate how the SQE examiners will be approaching the legal rules, such that you're thinking about it more holistically rather than as a series of unconnected facts. So we knew that perfectly. And you would rate your score based on how well you knew it. And the key to getting to a point of competence with this content such that you're confident and of relatively lower stress than the average SQE candidate because you're prepared and you back yourself is being honest with your ratings so that you can let this algorithm in the software bring the content that you need to see back to your eyes more frequently. So when I clicked 5 there on that one, the algorithm is saying, well, he knows that. So I'm going to put that to the back of the queue in terms of shuffling the cards for what you will see next. But if let's say, for example, I did not know that persons includes corporates as well as individuals, as we just discussed with regard to the previous card, we know it does. But I didn't know that at all. So I'm going to say I didn't know that at all. And then Brainscape will put that to close to the front of the queue as it shuffles the cards. Although, as you will see, if you haven't studied it at all, you will just see the cards in order. But as you complete decks and restudy, you'll get a random mix. So it's good to treat the content in that way and not just consider it as blocks of subjects, because as you will see on the SQE1, you do not get a nice neat set of 25 questions in business and 25 questions in constitutional and 25 questions in contract. It's completely random over the 16 subjects what you might see. So you need to be able to ultimately, once you have absorbed all this content in order, be able to shuffle it up and consider concepts in different orders and different subjects in different orders, because that's the mindset that you need to be in for the SQE1. So what is a business? It's buying or selling goods or services for a fee. I knew it. So you're just continuously training the algorithm to show you what you need to see. Is it material if a business actually realizes a profit? As we discussed, it isn't, as long as they intend to. But let's say I didn't know that. I didn't know that. That's interesting. This is how you need to treat the content. You're engaging with the content. You're being free of um, pre-existing notions about the content, and you're just engaging with it and letting the method teach you, and how you rate the answers teach you. And then ultimately over time, the idea is, if you're consistent with your approach and following a schedule, which is also provided with the flashcards, which you can input the date at which you did the review of a chapter or a deck, and you need to be revisiting it 4 to 5 days later, no more than a week, to be able to do it again, to refresh, to strengthen the connection in your brain with this content, such that you remember it both long term, but also on a way that you can recall it very quickly in the exam. Because the quicker you can recall a rule of law in the exam and answer a question, you get about a minute 40 per question. So the quicker you can uh, recall the rule of law and pick out the right answer and move on, the more questions you can do in less time. You can bank time then for the difficult questions, or even as an advanced strategy, which I recommend. If you can get to that point, be so proficient with answering the questions that you're able to bank enough time to afford yourself 3 or 4 minutes to stand up and go out into the waiting area and grab a drink and come back and treat each session of 90 questions on each sitting of the SQE 4 times 90, 2 for FLK1, 2 for FLK2. If you can take a couple of minutes, bank them by the methods that you will ultimately learn by having this information very quickly able to be recalled, you can end up taking breaks and splitting the 90 into sets of 30, which is how you minimize your stress in the SQE and how you keep your brain and your cognition functioning to be able to recall the information and really stay the course, because it can be quite draining if you just treat this as 90 questions in 2 hours and 33 minutes, because you're just going to feel a bit bogged down by question 70, or even though you still have quite a few to go. So if you can afford get your question proficiency, which the strategies that sqesuccess.co.uk teaches, and also this content which gets the information into your head, but also in a way that you're able to recall it. And these short prompts are generally in the style of what the question will be at the bottom of an SQE question. That is not to say that this will teach you question strategy, but this will get the legal content into your head. And these short prompts are about the same length of words that the bottom stem of an SQE1 question will be before you pick the answer choice based on the fact pattern that was above the question. So you're thinking about the content in a more active, engaged way, keeping your brain active, and that's just going to keep you sharper as long as you're consistent with the how to engage the content on the exam itself. So we'll do one more flashcard. What does a party receiving a share of the profits of a business raise the presumption of? If parties share in the profits of a business that they've done together, if you and your friend start selling trinkets that you make, craft trinkets that you make at a local market, and you make more money than it costs to do everything, to get the license for the stall and to make the trinkets and whatever else, those profits, if you share those, no matter the proportion, if you share those, there's a presumption that you are in a general partnership. So I hope that's a helpful insight into how sqesuccess.co.uk's content interacts with this Brainscape platform, and also how it can be used as an efficient and, dare I say, even fun way to learn the SQE 1 and 2 content, because obviously much of the same content on SQE 1 is also tested on SQE 2, but not obviously in as great of detail, but you still need to know quite a fair bit about the law to do well in SQE 2. So hopefully that's a helpful introduction into how to use the content. And if you are interested in uh, getting access to all of these decks, so there's a deck for each subject on the SQE with subdecks for all of the subtopics that are on those that were in the SRA syllabus. As I say, it's £25 at the moment for access to each individual deck, or you can buy access to all 16 for 250. And I'm also offering one-to-one tutoring on Zoom, which is at £50 per hour, to discuss, if you want business content, as I've just been doing. No matter the subject, we can discuss it and talk about problem questions, or talk about things that you are struggling to get to grips with, but also to discuss both SQE1 question strategy, because there is a method and a strategy that can afford you the time to go and take breaks and have a drink. I did it, and you can get to that point if you know the content well enough, and you have a strategy that works with almost every question, if not every question, because they're all structured in the same way, and the answer choices are logic. You can make logical inferences based on the answer choices, so you're answering the questions quicker and making the most efficient use of your time, such that if you want, you can bank time to either spend more time on the ones that will be tricky, because you're not going to find every single question a breeze. You can find most of them, or some of them, a breeze if you implement good, if you have good grasp of the legal content and you have a good question strategy, or if you wanted to, as I said, take breaks. So, and also offering insight and tutorials on the SQE2 skills and strategies, because that is entirely gameable as well. in the sense of you can be really efficient with your study methods if you recognize how the assessment criteria are shared among the different skills. And if you go about it in the sense of mastering the assessment criteria rather than thinking about each individual skill in a vacuum, you can have a much more overall approach, which I think is good to be a good lawyer, because if you have a holistic approach to how you do each of your tasks as a lawyer, drafting, writing, researching, and you're working in the same way, that will give your final work product a more integral feel. And if you think about the assessment criteria as they relate to multiple different skills, you can uh, maximize the output from your study efforts and minimize your stress when it comes to SQE2. But you still need to know the legal content for SQE2, and that is where these flashcards will still come in handy. So contact John at sqesuccess.co.uk for more information, or if you want to access this. But otherwise, hope you found the video helpful.